Okay, we're delighted to welcome hot from his recent Montane Winter Spine race victory, Eoin Keith, all the way from over in Ireland. Now, Ian's no stranger to the Spine race, but the 10th anniversary edition was possibly the most exciting edition of the race that I've followed since starting with my involvement in 2016. Ian's competed in the Barclay Marathons and has won loads of other races, but in today's interview, I'd like to reflect mainly on the Spine race and in particular this year's edition. For those of you who don't know what the Spine race is, where have you been, firstly? And secondly, it's a 268-mile non-stop race, usually 268 mile, but we'll come back to that about this year's race, along the Pennine Way, all the way from Edale in Derbyshire to Kirkyettam in Scotland. And it's in January, which generally means racing in rain, bogs, wind, and often snow and ice, with only 8 hours daylight in each 24-hour period. So why on earth do we do it? That will be the first question. But Ian, could you please tell me a little bit about your relationship with the Spine and how many times you've entered it and what your finishing positions have been?
I think I've entered it 7 times now. There was a lot of discussion about this during the race and plenty of time to think it through. So I've had 2 DNFs and then I have 2 second places and 3 wins, but one of those wins was in the male category, second to Jasmine as the overall winner. But if we count female winners as winners, I'm going to count male winners as winners since we're just a weaker sex.
Yeah, I mean, the 2019 edition was a particularly special edition.
It certainly was.
But no, forget the front of the race. It's because it's the only one I finished. No, that's some fantastic record, and I know I had a brief word with you early on in the race when I met you at one of the roadheads, and your expectations were quite low, at least outwardly, for this year's race. Do you want to talk about
it? Genuinely, yeah, because I'm getting old. I'm 53 now, and I'm losing gears at the top end of the range. So, I can still plod away in 1, 2, 3, but 4 and 5 are sort of not quite there anymore. So I'm up against the speedy guys, and this year we had a very deep field with the likes of Damien Hall, who's got it all. He holds the FKT for the Pennine Way. He has experience in racing the Spine itself. I first met Damien in my first Spine, and we shared time together on the trail. And he's literally written the book. He's written a guidebook, so he should know what he's doing navigation-wise. Plus, he had plenty of other fast people like Kim Collison, Dougie Zinnes. And 2 other past winners were down as entered as well. Eugenie being the obvious one, who's a bit of a Spine institution. So there were so many people there, and Eugenie has gotten better over the years and gotten faster and learned how to navigate. So I thought I'd be lucky to get anywhere near the top 5 or around the podium. So,
and Eugenie
just ran my own race.
More about Eugenie later, obviously.
Yeah.
So when I met you at Stanage, you certainly you were doing a sensible race. I think you were doing an Eoin Keith race. You were running your own race, and your words to me at that point when I was taking some video was, "I'm certainly feeling my age."
Yeah. Because I was plotting it out, but then I started thinking about it a bit, and I realized that I was actually want a better term, using the low gear as well. I was actually fat burning along quite happily, and in a relatively comfortable position. And I realized that compared to my sense of speed perception of where I would have been in earlier days, I wasn't looking around at every house thinking, could I call in there and ask for Coke? How long till I get to the next station? I was actually cruising quite comfortably and not craving anything. So it just took me quite a few hours to realize I was doing that, and that kind of settled my mind a bit. That I was comfortably running my own race, which is all you can really do, because my opinion would be, if you run your own race and you run your own race to the best of your ability, your best results should naturally pop out.
So that I think that's a very sensible way of racing, and it's obviously born from your years of experience on various races, not getting sucked in with the fast boys at the front, or girls, the fast people at the front. And is that something you are comfortable with in the early stages of a multi-day race?
Absolutely, yeah. It's very, very comfortable with it. It's always been a strategy. I'm a fan of even pacing if I can get away with it. When I race the sort of purer forms of ultra running, which is the flat looped races like 24-hour running. I aim for very even pacing, and I've found actually that when I look at my lap times, I often have the most even pacing of anyone in the race, and that includes at World Championships. So it's something I'm pretty good at, and definitely use as a tactic.
I think that's perhaps something that people listening to this can take away from your experience is the fact that that even pacing, in the end, it's just a mathematical calculation.
It is pretty much, yeah. It's very calculated, and it's also a more comfortable way to run the race. There's nothing worse than to go out too fast, get exhausted, and start getting overtaken by other people. It's far better to be the one go out at a comfortable pace, not be exhausted, but stay comfortable, and then slowly start overtaking the people. You have to be mentally having a much more enjoyable race if you do it that way as well as physically.
Because I think almost your comfortable pace in the early stages belies your competitive nature.
Oh yeah, I'm extremely competitive. I've no doubt about it. It can occasionally be my undoing, all right. But yeah, I've definitely got a competitive nature. And it wasn't that I wasn't competing. It was just I was competing to the best strategy I thought I have, given all the parameters at the time,
Yeah,
which of course worked out very well in the end. But
yeah,
I have to play the long game.
that is fascinating. What keeps you going back to the spine, Ian?
Uh, what I've been saying, what I was saying out there, it's pretty true actually in this case, is that if I think about not going, I know that I would spend the time looking at the dots moving across the screen, wondering how I'd be doing, and possibly get frustrated at thinking I might be up there competing at the front.
Mm.
And so I might as well, instead of watching the dots, be the dot. And so that's what drives me back.
And in terms of your kind of mindset, it almost seems like you don't have the highs, you don't have the lows that you see with some runners. It looks like I've seen you at many checkpoints at various points in the race, and it does seem like you're an even-tempered fella throughout the race. Would you say?
I, I try to be, but I do get highs and lows like everyone else. I mean, lows in the spine for me have in the past most often been sleep deprivation. Uh, and it just so happens that this race I really managed to effectively get it out of the way far more effective than I ever managed before, which made for a much better race from my point of view, much more enjoyable. The highs were actually very much there this time, and a few people got to see those at the right points,
I think we're going to come on to
as I
those
slipped.
hopefully.
Yeah, yeah.
Certainly, there are some more flamboyant characters in the race, and their highs seem to be very high, and also the lows seem to be very low, and a lot of energy seems to be expended during those periods. Um, yeah, I won't ask you to comment on that. We'll come on to that. In terms of this year's race, and firstly, I think everyone was just pleased to be out racing after
Yeah.
after COVID. How would you manage the COVID period? How would you manage with your training with an absence of races?
Yeah, I kept looking forward as much as possible. It had to come to an end. From a training point of view, we had some tight restrictions in Ireland. Like at one stage, we were down to a 2K limit that you could move in, which would have been very tight, except for the fact that I live under a hill, so I was able to actually get in quite a lot of trail running even within that 2K limit. So the other thing, I lost my work commute by bike, which I was always using as an effective bit of training, really. So what I did is I just compensated everything in, and rather than commute to work, I went out to the shed and sat on a turbo trainer for the equivalent amount of time, and read the newspapers. It turned out to be more time efficient in the end, and
Right.
probably more intense exercise. So I actually probably did more exercise and more training during the lockdowns. It was just frustration of all the races getting cancelled was probably the worst thing about it from
Some
my
people
point of view.
commented about the race sharpness having gone, but I didn't see that from Ian Keith. I didn't see.
No, it definitely wasn't gone. It's always there on tap. It's just an inbuilt competitive nature. It's not something I need to work on. Quite the opposite.
Yeah, I mean, during the race this year, it was an altered race because of Storm Arwen and the issues around Kielder Forest and it being 15 miles shorter. And Thankfully, the organisers had still been able to run the race, but had to do a bus transfer or a car transfer for those 15 miles. How did you feel about these detours and that change in the race? And did it alter your tactics?
In terms of how to feel about it, you just take those as they come. You know, races spin things at you, and you adapt. And I used to do adventure racing quite a lot, and you know, the nature of adventure racing is you're constantly adapting to things thrown at you, so you have to be very dynamic and you know, respond to these things effectively and be able to think on your feet. So getting prior warning of it is relatively easy. In terms of what did I think of it? Before, and I was thinking it would be a disadvantage because, you know, the longer things are, the more useful for me. So knocking miles off and having people able to do a reset is normally work against me because I seem to cope better with the long, non-stop effort than other people. And if you put stops in, then it's definitely to my detriment. But given where the racing situation ended up at the time, it actually worked in my favor.
Yeah, we will come back to that because I think it certainly that the diversion and the transport did happen at a very significant time in the race. It certainly stopped me doing any work that afternoon. Initially, what was it your thoughts? So going back to the beginning of the race, and we talked about the field was very stacked. It was the most stacked race.
Most stacked field ever, yeah, no doubt about it. On both the men's and the women's.
Yeah, certainly. And what were your thoughts? Because Damien and Kim went off at like rockets, and they were certainly appeared. I saw them quite a few times on that first day, and they certainly appeared to be a very cohesive team. They were working together, it would appear, and working well together. What were your thoughts before the race regarding that partnership, or who you thought would be in the lead?
I thought Damien would be out in his own, so I didn't know how well. I thought Kim and Dougie would be the next most likely to be able to chase him. So that just showed that Kim seemed to be more up for the high speed matching of Damo. So I wasn't too surprised because, you know, the raw speed is there for all of those runners. They'd all be capable of going out at that speed. I just knew that Damien was capable of holding that speed to the end. So for him, it wasn't as much of a gamble. I think I could be wrong, but for Kim, it may have been a bigger gamble. But I don't think he's done running race at that length. He's certainly adventure race that length. I'm not sure he's done a full length running race. Yeah. But the competitive nature undoubtedly kicks in. Now, in retrospect, it may have worked against both of them that they did that speed. But certainly in Kim's case, it seems the more obvious one. But Damien, I think, was able to handle it. I wasn't at all surprised to see him do it. In fact, I was very much hoping he'd get out there and try and break the, you know, well, couldn't break the record because of the diversion, but, you know, at least set the kind of record-breaking pace that he's well capable of.
But it was certainly an all or nothing strategy, yeah. I felt, for both of them.
Yeah.
Of them. And there were certain people further down the pack who were kind of between you and Damien and Kim, people like Dougie and Mark Clarkson and Simon Gaffella, all decent runners with good pedigree behind them.
Yeah, there was quite a few around, and Eugenie was certainly showing his modern pace, which is pretty hot. You know, he is now quite a fast runner, and he's got the navigational skills to actually stay going in the right direction with that speed now. So again, I wasn't surprised to see that. He was of all of them, he's the one I raced most recently because I raced against him in the 360 Challenge in La Gomera only last November, where we had been back and forth about 4 times. He was faster and I was just more consistent. So I wasn't surprised to see that. I wasn't surprised to see Dougie out there. The only surprise was I didn't know the South African runner who was up there. But looking at his race stats afterwards and seeing that he'd been 4th in the Tour de Gaunt, then I'm not surprised that he was able to blister out of that speed.
And has Dougie got a double Bob Graham as well?
So he's got a double Bob Graham and he won the Challenger, of course. So that's a specific spine experience with a bit of speed in there.
And I know Mark Clarkson is new to multi-day racing, but he'd won the OM as well.
Yeah, Yeah.
So, and I'd worked with Mark on the safety team previously,
Yeah.
and I knew what a humble but talented runner he was. So that was obviously interesting to see him. His first multi-day race was interesting.
Yeah, and as you say, Simon was there as well, and he's a bit of a like a very consistent, very determined runner. So I knew him once you know he was going to make it to the end, and he was going to make it to the end consistently more than likely. So he would gobble up any mistakes that anyone else front made. So I wasn't surprised to see him working through the field as well.
Very consistent, very consistent. So going through the race, obviously, the issues were we lost Kim first, and then later on by Hawes or Alston, we lost Damien. We lost Damien at Alston.
Alston, and we'd lost a few other runners in between. We'd lost our South African friend in Middleton.
Mm-hmm.
His legs had looked pretty bad condition. And yeah, there may have been one or two others as well, because on the female side, things were getting decimated quite early as well. So.
Yeah, certainly. I will be interviewing Debbie later this week as well,
Okay.
and the female race was just as fascinating as the male race. Yeah, really interesting. So if we're looking at the situation as we got into the latter half of the race, was Eugenie had built up a significant lead.
He certainly had, and it kind of been handed to him, because I can remember sitting in Middleton and actually arriving into Middleton. Myself and Dougie and James had arrived in together. We'd been running together for about an hour or two, and just working together to get to Middleton. And as we were arriving in, Eugenie was heading out, so we got to say hello and high five and have a bit of a greeting. Janie was playing music on some loudspeakers and looking very relaxed at that point. So he looked like he was out the door, gone. He was going to build up a Susan lead, which he did indeed. We were sitting in the middle, and the three of us saying at the time, we're 4, 5, 6. I say I'd be happy enough at 6. It's the rows in front of us are quality. They'll probably plow on. And before we even left, we'd already gained the place, because South African runner pulled out. And then when Damien dropped, which was after CP4, I think.
After Alston.
After Alston, yeah. Eugenie basically got handed the lead by the others in front dropping out.
I did see a picture of him just after he'd been told, and he certainly looked like the cat who got the cream. He looked very happy.
I'm not surprised. I was actually quite happy for him, I have to say, because for a guy who's clearly worked on the weaknesses, to find himself leading the race is a good thing. And I reckoned at that point, my thought, and I said it to a few people who I met along the route, that Eugenie was out there in front, and he would win the race, and that the only person who would defeat Eugenie would be Eugenie.
And which has happened before, for those who don't know. Eugenie has dropped with 10k to go previously at Hut 2 over the Cheviots.
Yeah, in rather spectacular style. Yeah, he has dropped out several times. Yeah,
I've seen Eugenie drop at Alston before as well with issues, and it tends to be fairly explosive when it happens.
It does tend to be spectacular.
Yeah, which is interesting. Possibly more so for onlookers.
Yeah, he's the tough guy, so he gives it his all. So it takes a lot to drag him down. So when he goes down, it's usually for a very big reason.
So we were watching the dots that make their way up through, and coming up to Hornisted seemed a really important part of the race, because Eugenie had a sleep. I don't know how much sleep had you had up until this point, Ian?
Well, I slept at CP2 for an hour. Slept at CP3 for an hour. I slept at CP4 for an hour, and that's
which is more than usual, is it?
In some, it probably was about the same, 3 hours sleep, but normally I'd have taken it as 1 + 2 hours rather than the 3 separate 1 hours. So it was a different strategy, one which I formulated on the fly, basically based on how I was feeling, but it was working exceptionally well, unbelievably well, because I was not getting sleep for 5 hours. Um, just compared to what you could get, I was just getting a little woozy here and there, which is nothing, quite frankly.
Right.
There was no major discomfort, and it wasn't affecting my speed at all. So I was in a very good position heading up towards Hornistead.
And how
I was
much did
very
you know
comfortable.
about what was unfolding ahead of you at that point?
Well, I knew very little until I was well into the diversion section. There was a big looping diversion around the forest
Before
in
Harnestead?
safety. Yeah, before Hornistead. And that a long section of that, what seems to go on forever, but probably only a couple of kilometers, was a trail that ran parallel to the road. And one race reporter, stopped his car on the road and let me know that Eugenie was slowing down considerably up ahead and that could catch him quite soon. And I was quite skeptical of that, quite honestly, because Eugenie was so far ahead.
He
You
really
know,
was.
he really was 7 or 10 kilometers. He had more than enough time to take a huge sleep break and do the best, and take as much sleep as he wanted, but he didn't for whatever reason. Uh, so I
Just
think it
before
got
we
to him there.
progress, Ian, I'll just explain what Harnestead is. It's a little pit stop. It's an oasis when you're in the middle of nowhere, and a lady equipped with drinks. There's sofas. There's the kettle to make a drink. It's quite a comfy place and quite a dangerous place, I think. You could spend a long time there, and indeed, that's what Eugenie did. So when you approached Harnestead, the pit stop, I wondered whether you were just going to run straight past or whether you actually went in. Do you want to tell me some more about your approach to it, your thoughts, and what you actually did there?
Well, at that stage, I knew Eugenie was in there. But I can't remember exactly how, but we were pretty sure that Eugenie was in there, and that he was sleeping. Certainly, Helen, who was the farmer from Hornsey, let us know as we were approaching. She comes out the trail a bit to welcome everyone in, provided he's not too busy. So I'd already decided I'd have a can of Coke when it was available, just to give him a little spurt to get Bellingham and over the line to the break before the lift. And so I was going to do that anyway. And so I just stuck to that plan. Basically, went in. Eugenie was in there. He greeted me. He was awake. I
But he was
stood up
away.
and he was awake. He offered me his chair, and I told him, no, you sit right here and stay comfortable. And I grabbed the Coke. Eugenie was not in a conversational mood. He looked very wrecked. But I just quickly had the can of Coke and walked out and said goodbye to him and wished him well.
So how
And
long
that
were
was
you in
pretty
there
much it.
for, Ian? How long?
I would say 5 minutes would be
Right.
a guess.
Right. And you, Jeannie, have
But
been in there a couple of hours, I think.
yeah, and what I've been told is we slept for 2 or 3, and
That might be Eugenie.
I think I'm being asked to be quiet. So,
Okay. We'll keep going. So that was a really important part of the race because after that was it was the lift for the next 15 miles. And any strategies in there, and how did that work?
no specific strategies. I didn't treat the lift as anything special. I just continued to treat the aid station as an aid station and took another hour's sleep, and which I was planning to do, and didn't try and sleep in the car. Just had a nice conversation with the driver,
Right.
and took it all in as
Right.
part of a different and new experience and part of the spine race, rather than over optimize it.
So then a little different approach onto the Cheviots
Yeah, slightly
this
different,
time.
slightly new.
How was that different?
It was just a new route, upper road to begin with, and then across a path through a firing range. So you did not want to wander too far off the route.
Right.
And then back onto the classic GBS route, and it was a beautiful night. So the sky was quite clear. So it was one of those great nights up in the GBS, which are
It
treasured.
almost seemed uneventful, your passage over the Cheviots. Would you say that was the case? And at what point did you feel that you had this race?
I had to keep concentrating because I knew that all I had to do was basically run a comfortable pace, and I had built a good margin up to that point. fact that I had left Bellingham before the other two behind got in meant that I was on a win-win. They would either take the sleep, which is what they did, and the gap would either be the same or grow, or if they didn't take a sleep, they'd probably pay for it towards the end. But frankly, you
Right.
know, my closing speed would see it out one way or the other. And I knew I was descending faster than the two behind, so
Right.
that in fact, if I was standing on top of the hill, the last big hill, side by side with them, I reckon I could absolutely win the sprint to the finish.
Brilliant,
So,
brilliant. Oh, that's interesting. So, hut one, hut two, did you stop at those?
I didn't stop at hut one. I was moving quite nicely and just said hello, but didn't stop. Um, Gave myself my first bit of food on that section just as a treat, more than anything, just as a well done, you got the hut one.
Right.
Uh, and then hut two, I stopped for a 1 minute conversation just to be nice and polite because I knew I had it in the bag. I could actually see, I had seen the head torches of the two behind way back on Land Hill distance. So I knew I could basically crawl in from there and should be able to make it. And pretty much did
I
a
did
crawl
crawl
speed.
in. I did crawl in.
Yeah, I did.
So, in terms of during the race, would you say everything went to plan? Certainly sounds as if it did, really.
Compared to
Your plan.
previous spine, yeah, compared to previous spine races, it was relatively calm and planned from my point of view. I kept a good pace. I found myself running paces that would have been what I was calling summer paces in winter time on some of the
Right.
descents where the ground was good. So I was very happy with that, and that was because I managed to keep my legs in good condition from not overrunning the first part, and that was all good. So there was a lot that was comfortable. The sleep deprivation was comfortable. The legs were comfortable. I still had uncomfortable bits. My feet were smashed. That was the one bit that was slowing me.
Well, one of the things that would be in terms of kit choices. I know you're sponsored by Columbia, and you wear the OutDry jacket, and
Yeah, and
I think you've worn that
I had
every.
it on head to toe. Yeah, absolutely. I've worn it on every spine. An out-dry jacket, out-dry rain leggings, and for this race, I had a new set of out-dry gloves, which were absolutely superb. Which
Right.
the best gloves I've used in the spine so far. So I was literally head to toe in the out-dry and in a nice comfort bubble. Uh, and in the middle of the tedious, I put on a very lightweight down jacket. I had my spare layer, which because I've been sort of on the edge of warm versus cold
Okay.
up to that point. And so when I dropped into a shelter, I just said, I can put on the down jacket and get thoroughly
An,
in the
inter-
warm section.
an interesting thing I did see about your kit is your poles. You use very high poles,
Yeah,
very
yeah.
tall. Is there must be a reason behind that? They seem much higher than most other people.
So I try to use some Nordic walking stuff. Is the short answer.
Right.
And place them well behind me and do Nordic walking marches along the
Hmm.
route where the opportunity arises. So
Yeah.
that's very long pulse setting. So I'm comfortable with
So you just watch next year in the spine. Everyone's going to be using very long poles and expecting to win.
that.
But have you
So
now you've been to the spine 7 times? What would you say are your favourite parts of the course?
Cheviot. I love Cheviot.
Is that because it's nearly over?
No, I think it's something about it. It's a very high, big mountain range, and in the winter race, it's kind of like though sometimes I look at it as anytime you see a head torch up there, it's something to do with the race because only racers or people associated with the race up there, and it's a vast area, and you're covering it for it can be 9 or 10 hours easily. And you're out there on your own. It's potentially dangerous, but you're responsible for your own safety, and it's really out there compared to any other part of the course, to my mind. And I love that feeling when you see head torches in the far distance. It's like ships on the ocean, that rare sighting kind of thing.
And I certainly
Monumental image.
know from your adventure racing days and from having conversations with you at previous races, you're more than able to look after yourself in the race and in those isolated situations. There doesn't seem
Yeah,
to be much that phases you really.
no, and I relish it up there actually, and that's I take it on board as something to embrace. That you are out there on your own.
Right.
You
Oh,
know,
that's
they really
excellent.
are adventure. You know, it's not just a running race on trail. That part of it is adventurous.
Good. Oh, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. And so, I suppose a few questions that come from that talk is, will you be back next year?
Oh, okay. I always wonder, but I'm sure the B and dot will kick in at some stage soon. I think it's almost inevitable.
And would you consider the summer spine at the moment? Would that be something you go back to, or are you a winter man?
Well, I enjoyed it greatly this last year. Which I suppose that's not its spine, but it's a different race in some spine, you know, very different race. And it's much more type one fun than the pure enjoyment of it. And I do enjoy being able to see the course and run fast on the bog as opposed to sink into it. You know, dried out bog is one of the best surfaces in the world you can run on. It's like running on mattresses.
Yeah, it's springy.
Wet bog is like running quicksand. It's torturous. So, you know, the big contrast between the summer and winter. The summer is very attractive. The only downside to the summer for me is it tends to be a busy time of year in terms of the race calendar. And there are so many things to do and races to be explored that
Which brings me on to my next question: is what's next for you? And have you got any challenges? Well, you will have challenges over the next 12 months.
yeah, well, I'm down for a few races. I'm down for the Northern Traverse, which is a race I love.
I'll see you there.
Yeah, great. Yeah, can't wait for it. And I'm currently down for a last one standing race next month, but we'll see what if I can get my form back in time post spine for that.
And where is that? Where is that?
That one's up in Northern Ireland, so it's those are always an ordeal, and they're quite arduous, and another test of sleep deprivation. The running doesn't get me in those with the sleep deprivation.
There's been some fantastic performances recently in the 24-hour races. In the backyard races.
There certainly have been, yeah. The standards are raising everywhere.
Incredible. Any other races?
I've applied for the UTMB. We'll see if we can get in. I have it in mind at some stage. I want to go back to doing 6-day racing, which is the 6-day racing on the flat, because it's
yeah, I believe it. So you've done the Transcendence race
in New York, yeah, the 6-day race, and the Hungary 6-day race as well.
The trailer park.
Yeah. So the New York one is in Corona Park in New York. I know exactly 1 mile loop. Round and round and round.
You know that loop.
I know that loop 500 times.
That's wonderful.
But and they're actually the races that scare me most, because they force me more into uncomfortable places than any other race I've done. So you know, the spine you'd think is hard, and it is one of those hardest races.
I think John Kelly summed it up well. He said when comparing the Barkley with the spine, he said the Barkley holds you closer to the flame, but the spine holds you there for longer.
Yeah.
I think it was a very interesting quote.
Yeah, they're both big testers, and they'd be both. When the Barkley is the hardest race I ever took.
So coming onto the Barkley, because you completed a loop, so congratulations on that. And on the second loop, you fractured your collarbone.
Yeah. Went on to finish the loop, but not complete the loop because it was way over time. But it was quite an adventurous experience, to say the least.
Would it be one that you would want to repeat?
Absolutely, I'd love it.
If Laz is listening.
It's one of those races, easier said than done to get in, that's for sure.
And certainly when you see some of the people who have performed in that, so I'm thinking of Cara Morgan, Nikki Spinks, Pavel Polanyi, and it's eaten them. So
yeah, that's one of the fun things about it. You're in a race with 30 or 40 people who are just some of the best racers you're going to meet. Incredible.
Apart from one.
Well, the year I was there, she actually got over a lap, which was more than some did. Yeah.
So for those who don't know, there is one. Did he refer to them as the idiot?
No, we're all idiots. They're the human sacrifice.
Human sacrifice. Someone who Lazarus Lake presumes have no hope.
No hope. yeah. Everyone dreads getting that number one, which indicates the human sacrifice. But yeah, so it's just what you're there with 30 or 40 unbelievably good athletes, and they're all getting their asses handed to them. You know, you're all getting absolutely hammered, and you're having to work together to take on the course. You know,
It's a
which is just
genius idea, along with the backyard ultra idea. Both are
it.
genius
But
ideas.
yeah, both. The last one was great evil geniuses, no doubt about it.
Yeah, yeah. So just as we bring the interview to a close, this has been fascinating, by the way. Would you, some of the people listening to this podcast or reading the article will be thinking about doing the spine for the first time. Would there be 3 tips you would give someone thinking about doing the Montane spine race for the first time?
Well, the first tip is if you think you really want to do it, is to do it. Because the most important factor that's going to get you to the end is desire. And this is from that desire is the drive that gets you to keep going and push on. You know, that's the main thing. You know, if you have that drive and that willpower, that's the number one thing you need to get to the line more than any kind of speed or kit or whatever. It's that drive. You know,
Okay, that's
and
interesting.
that's definitely tip number one. Once you know you want it, go for it.
Right. Yeah. I certainly think that I failed on my first attempt, and that made my desire on the second attempt much more.
Yeah,
But then I
yeah.
went to try and do it 3 times, and the desire to do it when I knew how bad it was wasn't there on the third time. Well, then I'm going back. Sorry, I interrupt. So, tip number 2.
Number two, I suppose preparation. You know, you don't have to recce everything, but you know, get yourself in your best shape. You know, put in the training, and that's more about time on feet than anything else. It's not necessarily about running fast, but just making sure you can go long. You don't need to practice sleep deprivation, but you know, it's good to practice being out at night. It's good to get comfortable being out at night on your own in the middle of nowhere. Make sure you know how to use all your equipment, particularly the GPS to get out of trouble. You know, all the equipment is there for a reason. So it's good to understand it all and what the reasons are to have it. You know, for your own safety. And don't skimp on equipment. You know, it's a race where you don't want to DNF because you chose to spend save a bit of money by buying a cheap bit of kit. It's one of those races where you know 80% of gear yield will do you 80% of the time. It's fine as a race where you need to bring that numbers up to the 100s. You know, you need the top, but you don't need. But it definitely helps to have the top gear that you can get and be comfortable with and know that it's there for you. You know, don't skimp. I have a heavier pack, I would say, than a lot of the front.
I was just going to mention that, and I noticed your pack was a heavier, and you're using the OM32.
Yeah,
Pack, which I think is a very common pack in the pack.
Yeah, and 32, it would be, I'd say 30 is the minimum you want. Just have that comfortable volume. You don't want to be leaving things out, you know. If you think you might need to bring a spare layer because the weather might turn, then you bring that spare layer. It's better to have it. Better to be looking at it than looking for it, as my old mountaineering friends would say. It's very true in Spy, you know. You know, if you slow down, your ability to generate heat slows down. So you need to be able to reach into the gear to help you.
That's fantastic, Ian. Thank you very much, and for all that information. It was fascinating to watch you, Dot, and I think you were surprised. You were genuinely surprised to be in that position.
I was, but I very much embraced it once I got there. I could tell
Yeah, you didn't do you didn't do the heel click this year. I've seen you do previous.
No, I wasn't capable.
Well, thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to following you on other races and at the Spine next year, hopefully.
Hopefully, we'll see you in Northern Traverse at the latest.
I will see you at the Northern Traverse, at least at the start.
Yeah.
But that's fantastic, and thank you so much for your time today. Thank you.
You're more than welcome.
Thank you.